In Peru, police repression left 21 people killed so far after the executive headed by Dina Boluarte and the Congress reached an agreement to decree a curfew. Argentina's Supreme Court of Justice sentenced social leader Milagros Sala to 13 years in prison, prompting the condemnation of social groups who support Sala. Railway workers in the United Kingdom started a second 48-hour strike to demand a 7% wage increase to mitigate inflation. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Ana Marrero from the teleSUR headquarters in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin with the news. Stay with us. In Peru, violence escalated after Dina Boluarte's government and the Congress decreed a curfew and a state of exception. During the state of emergency, constitutional right has inviolability of the freedom of transit through the national territory, freedom of assembly, and personal liberation and security are suspended. These allowances have led to a violence escalation by the army that has already left 21 dead to date, 9 of them in the last few hours, and 52 wounded in Ayacucho alone. Human rights organizations and even the United Nations mission in the country have expressed concern about this proportionate increase in repression in the context of the curfew. The former president, Pedro Castillo, took to Twitter to issue an alert message in which he informed of arbitrary plans against the Peruvian people. In a first tweet, President Castillo alerted the Peruvian people regarding the visit of the U.S. ambassador to the government palace as a backstage move and not in favor of the people. The former head of state also sounded the alarm on the massacres and genocides against the protesters under the complicity of the nation and right-wing dominated media. After the escalation of violence and the death of protesters, the Minister of Education and Culture stepped down from their position. In an open letter addressed to the President Dina Boluarte, the head of the education portfolio, Patricia Correa, lamented the current crisis in the nation and condemned the violent repression against the demonstrators, citing the branch of democracy as the cause of her resignation. For his part, the Culture Minister, Jair Perez, said that the regrettable events in our country that had led to the irreparable loss of brothers and sisters turned my permanent in your government unsustainable. In this context, the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights denounces the increase of violence and repression in the midst of the political crisis that the country is experiencing. Through a communique, the organization called for the implementation of United Nations standards on the peaceful protest in order to protect human rights and prevent the increase of violence. In Mexico, health authorities reported with the death of 2 women on Thursday. The number of victims of aseptic meningitis in the state of Durango has reached a total of 25. The Durango Health Secretariat indicated that there are now 73 confirmed cases of the disease and that the patients are under a special supervision. The entity also explained that 3 patients were referred to the National Institute of Neurology and Neurosurgery in Mexico City in order to perform surgical procedures in better conditions and to avoid any complications. In Ecuador, the Teachers National Union has mobilized throughout the country to protest against the policies of the administration of Guillermo Lasso. One of the main reasons for the protest is the demand for more teachers' quotas for the so-called salary equalization from which many teachers have been excluded. The Teachers National Union is also demanding from the government to make more resources available for education and to provide better security conditions at school so that they might resume classes. In Venezuela, a trial was held on Friday in the framework of a trial for the diplomatic immunity of Alex Saab, who has been kidnapped by the government of the United States for the past 2 years. The event was organized by Free the Alex Saab movement and took place in the vicinity of the Venezuelan National Assembly. During the meeting, several liberties and social organizations expressed their support to the diplomat and rejected the kidnapping plan by the government of the United States. In addition, in an extraordinary session, the Venezuelan parliament approved an agreement of support to Saab and recalled the work that allowed the bring aid and food to the families in the middle of the blockade against the country. The Chamber of Deputies of Bolivia approved on Thursday the bill of the General State budget for next year. With 68 votes in favor, the legislators approved the bill in plenary session. Herges Mercado, president of the Chamber of Deputies, points out that with the approval of the law, the legislature is giving a positive answer to the Bolivian people. The budget from 2023 foresees a gross domestic product growth of 4.86%, a public investment of more than $4 million, and the payment of social bonuses to prevent the welfare of the most vulnerable population. In Argentina, social organizations and human rights advocates reject the Supreme Court ruling that ratifies the 13-year prison sentence for social leader Milagros Sala. The Tupac Amaru indigenous organization denounces that a Supreme Court's decision against the activist shows that democracy in the country is a merged declaration. The organization stated that such actions simulate institutional leaders so that the economic groups and their political representatives can ensure the social injustice as the inevitable fate of popular majorities. Likewise, the Minister of Justice and Human Rights points out that the Supreme Court had validated the political and judicial prosecution against Sala by rejecting an appeal presented by her defense for violations of due process. We'll take our very first break now, but remember, you can now follow us on our TikTok account at teleSUR English, in which you will be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and more. Stay tuned for more news. Welcome back to From the South. On Thursday night, the United States Congress passed the annual defense authorization bill worth more than $800 million. The U.S. Senate approved the National Defense Authorization Act from fiscal year 2033 and sent it to the White House for signature a week after it went through the House of Representatives. The NDAA authorized more than $800 million for the Pentagon and $30.3 billion for national security programs within the U.S. Department of Energy. The legislation also increased the top-line authorization level by $45 billion above President Joe Biden's budget request to address the effect of inflation. According to data published by the United States Commerce Department, retail sales dropped in November, falling even lower than analysts had estimated. Retail sales decreased 0.6%. It is the largest fall since December 2021 and surpasses Dow Jones' predictions of 0.3% decline. Customers pulled back on spending in several retail sectors. Fortune rate saw a 2.6% drop, garden centers and buildings and materials trade drums down 2.5%, and auto dealers and auto parts sellers saw a 2.3% fall. Moscow believes that the United States doesn't have the means to destroy Russia, while Washington announces the continuation of its plan to train troops in Ukraine. Russian Foreign Minister spokeswoman Maria Zakharova responds to this statement by the White House press secretary carrying a young period on Washington's desire to exclude Moscow from the United Nations Security Council. In this regard, Sakharov points out that if there were a way to destroy Russia, they would do it instantly, just as if there were a mechanism to seize all the world's natural resources. They would do it quickly from Washington. In the sense, the Russian spokeswoman shared that there is no way to destroy her nation, and moreover, Russia is ready to face the U.S. pretensions. European Union ambassador approved the 9th round of sanctions against Russia as leaders gave their green light to an 18 billion euros aid package for Ukraine. The new sanctions package was finalized by the ambassador on the sidelines of the summit of the United Nations leaders in Brussels. The proposal planned for a further 200 Russian individuals and entities to be hit with asset freezes and travel bans. This includes government ministers, lawmakers, regional governors, political parties, and entities including the armed forces. After a fire at the shopping mall in Istanbul this Friday, Turkish authorities continue investigating the cause of the incident. The fire department disclosed that the fire started on the roof of the company building and was controlled thanks to the intervention of a large number of its personnel. Authorities also reported no injuries or human losses, together with the evacuation of all visitors and workers from the establishment. They also emphasized that security agencies remain in the area, investigating the causes of the fire. Russian assets frozen by the Greece government, which has repeatedly stilled the European Union sanctions against Moscow, rose to $925 million by the end of November from the previously reported $3,000. According to the Hungarian newspaper Népszava, nearly 19 billion euros linked to Russian individuals under sanctions have been frozen by the end of November in the European Union member states. Due to the conflict in Ukraine, the European Union has so far introduced punitive measures against more than 1,000 individuals in 118 organizations, which includes frozen assets and imposed travel bans. Rail workers in the United Kingdom begin on Friday the second 48-hour strike this week to demand a 7% wage increase to mitigate inflation. Members of the Rail, Maritime and Transport Union are trying to force negotiations with their employers and Network Rail after a failed attempt that led them to halt services last Tuesday and Wednesday. The company offered a 5% increase to the workers, but it is insufficient in the opinion of the union members, who are demanding at least a 7% wage adjustment, alleging that inflation in the country is at least 10%. We have more news coming up after this financial break, so don't go away. Welcome back. The Parliament of Slovakia has approved an unconfident vote against the Prime Minister Eduard Heger. The motion was introduced by the Freedom and Solidarity Party. The initiative passed with 78 votes, 2 more than was needed. 20 Parliament members opposed the motion and other 2 abstained. Slovak Parliament President Boris Kolar said following the endorsement of the motion against Slovak Prime Minister Heger, it will be possible to call for early elections, which could be held between May and June 2023. On Friday, Serbia has formally requested NATO to develop troops in Kosovo on the grounds of protecting the safety of its citizens. According to local media, the authorities have said the request to the commander of the NATO mission for Kosovo to deploy 1,000 members of its army and police in agreement with the United Nations Security Council Resolution 1244. The Serbian said the measure was unanimously approved, and he emphasized that it is an important decision for the security of Kosovo's Serb citizens. On his part, Serbia's foreign minister denounced the Kosovo authorities for their negligence in preventing an escalation of the conflict in the region. And difficult living conditions for Syrian refugees in Lebanon. Some 90% of refugee families need humanitarian assistance to survive. The information was issued on Friday by the United Nations Refugee Agency, the World Food Programme, and the United Nations Children's Fund. The statement added that the Syrian children and adolescents are the most affected by the Lebanon's economic crisis. The agency's assessment showed that the children's nutrition is at stake, with less than half of infants under 5 months of age being exclusive breakfast, and only 11% meeting the minimum number of meals at a group and food groups per day. Jordanians took to the streets on Friday, and activists called for more protests over fuel prices rises that have added to the cost of living increase. Died after riots in a southern city left one police officer dead. The authorities said that the policeman was killed on Thursday by a gunshot fired by an unidentified individual when armed officers entered a neighborhood of Mana to quell riots. Tensions have mounted in Man and several other cities in southern Jordan, specifically after days of truck drivers' strikes protesting high fuel prices and demanding cuts in diesel prices. The Iranian government says they consider the resolution adopted by the United Nations General Assembly on Human Rights in Iran as void of legitimacy. In a statement written by Iran's foreign minister's spokesman, Iranian authorities refer to the resolution entitled Human Rights Situation in the Islamic Republic of Iran as an Iranian resolution call. The initiative was approved with 80 votes in favor, 29 against, and 65 abstentions. At the United Nations General Assembly, the Iranian diplomat recalled that the resolution had been introduced by Canada with the support of the European Union and the government of Israel, and that it reflects the hypocrisies of its sponsors from it abuses human rights concepts and values for political purposes. And just as the heart of millions of fans leave the emotion of Qatar 2022 World Cup, teleSUR joins this disappointing event with From the Field, a show that brings news, analysis, reviews, and more to our audience. Don't miss it. Our show airs 1 p.m. local time in Caracas and 12 p.m. local time in New York. Remember, From the Field only on teleSUR. And we have come to the end of this brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on our socials, we're on Facebook, Twitter, and on Instagram as well. For teleSUR English, and from the South, I'm Ana Marrero, and thank you for watching.